A winter's day on Sedgemoor, only a few feet above sea level at best. This is the heartland of Somerset and the West Country's most prized wetland region. Here, winter flooding and intense light changes make these levels one of the great evocative English landscapes. This is a man-made landscape that's evolved over hundreds of years of water, wildlife, reeds and willows. Yet within a few miles on this same day on the Exmoor Hills, the scene changes dramatically. In blizzard conditions, hardy ponies caked crusty with snow eke out an often harsh existence on the high moor and capture the essence of this film, that of moorland contrasts. Sedgemoor, Exmoor, Dartmoor and Bodmin Moor are the moors of the West Country Peninsula. In between them lies a gentle agricultural patchwork similar to that found elsewhere in Britain today. The high moors, though, climb up to the clouds, often wild and foreboding, or otherwise glorious and inviting. They are the epitome of nature in her element as her moods change. Having had their associations with working man since ancient times, it is not surprising that the moors have captured the imaginations of locals, writers and travellers through the ages. The moors have given rise to many odd and intriguing stories. After being handed down from generation to generation, many of these stories have become legend. Inspiration comes easily, as lonely weathered stones on Dartmoor are simple testament to the scattered upland farming presence of early man. Today, the ancient past can form part of local beliefs. Homage to a long-gone pagan age was found by chance outside this Bronze Age burial kist on Bodmin Moor. Here also, derelict tin mines are bleak monuments to the cruel working existence of industrialized man in more recent times. However, the story of the West Country moors begins on Sedgemoor, a short distance away from Glastonbury Tor, at the Isle of Athelney. 1,000 years ago, these mere 100 acres were part of a Saxon Wessex occupied by Danish Vikings. All around was undrained marsh, into which King Alfred sought sanctuary with the remnants of his Dane-battered army. Here, as legend has it, Alfred burnt the cakes as he lost himself in thought how he could rid Wessex of the Danish menace. Salvation came to Alfred in a vision of the Virgin Mary. Drawing hope and strength, he cast a jewel from his cloak before her feet as an offering. He then mustered an army of hundreds which he marched out of his Athelney stronghold to finally defeat the Danes, bringing peace to the realm. In 1693, a piece of jewellery was found in the Athelney soil inscribed in Anglo-Saxon, "Alfred had made me." Perhaps this was the jewel of legend. Alfred's base was made tactically secure by Burrow Mump, called by the Saxons Totiot, or Lookout Island. Its views over the moor are superb, and with its 18th century folly, it's a Sedgemoor feature second only to Glastonbury Tor. It is said that the Tor was once the court of the fairy king, Gwyn ap Nudd, until St. Colin sprinkled the place with holy water, making the fairies enter the bowels of the Tor forever. The Tor, though, has a much grimmer tale to tell. In 1539, during the dissolution of the monasteries, King Henry VIII ordered the last abbot of Glastonbury, Richard Whiting, to be dragged to the top of the Tor and hung, drawn and quartered, for his refusal to give up his office. This act effectively cut out the region's monastic heart that had existed even before King Alfred's day. Glastonbury had been the richest abbey, bar only Winchester, in all England. The abbey was said by Henry's commissioners to be the goodliest house of any sort that we have seen, a house fit for the King's Majesty and no man else. Early photographs portray the abbey's fallen state. These stones, it was said, once hid England's most romantic secret. Underneath the abbey, monks found the bones of a man and woman buried with an inscribed lead cross. It read, "Here in the Isle of Avalon, the famous King Arthur lies buried." The story tells how the dying Arthur was taken to the mysterious isle by barge. The moor's ever-present water has always played a part in its history, and flooding, or the fear of it, has plagued all those who have lived the wetland life. The abbey monks drained the Sedgemoor swamps between the 10th and 14th centuries, but as this 17th century engraving shows, flooding when it came continued to be devastating. Even these days, nothing has changed very much, as extensive and rising waters around Ling, Stoke St Gregory and Boroughbridge show. The ever-waterlogged Sedgemoor soil makes it ideal for the moor's traditional industry of withy or willow growing. Harvesting of the withies was once done by hand, but this work is now carried out in the winter months by man and machine, using specially designed tractor-like harvesters. The cut withies are used in age-old wicker crafts based on the expert skills of hurdle and basket making. And today, such skill has been joined by the new art of wicker sculpture. The willow industry is based solely on natural materials, and nothing is wasted. Any leftovers, like these seen here, are turned into artist's charcoal. Wise use of the moor allows a rich diversity of nature to develop, but it relies on the continual stewardship of the land by working farmers. They are aided by drainage ditches or rines, with the addition of pumps and sluices that help to ensure the delicate balance of water levels is maintained. But back once more to the past, and to the bloodiest event in Sedgemoor history. The summer of 1685 saw the last land battle on English soil. In less than 4 hours, the Protestant cause of the Duke of Monmouth to depose the Catholic crown died, as did 1,500 of his brave Somerset rebels before royal cannon, bullets and sabres. After the carnage, one captured rebel soul was roped to a horse and promised his life if he outran it. He did, but it was an empty promise, and he was hanged. The ghostly sound of hooves and running feet can be heard around Western Zoyland to this day. In the village itself, the parish church was used as a prison for 500 rebel wounded the night after the battle. They were locked up without food, water, or medical attention. 7 of them died, and the survivors were either transported or, like the unfortunate ghostly runner, hanged. Sentence was delivered by the brutal Judge Jeffreys in his notorious bloody assize. The effect on Somerset was devastating. A larger proportion of the population was killed, executed or transported in 1685 than were lost during the whole of the First World War. The handfuls of rebels that did escape were mercilessly hunted. A few made their way to nearby Exmoor to live out a wretched outlaw existence. Perhaps it was these men who became the inspiration for the Doones in R.D. Blackmore's famous story, Lorna Doone. An Exmoor winter can be cruel on man or beast, like on any of the high moors. The bitter weather can only be endured by the fittest of creatures, and as soon as winter descends with her full severity, life becomes a bleak battle for survival. Snow fumes blown up by numbing winds soon make the finding of food the all-consuming instinct for farm and wild animals alike. Deer help themselves at the farmer's expense from the easy pickings of root crop fields, whilst ice-heavy Exmoor ponies seem to accept the fiery cold. Early growth in the woodlands and snowdrops are the first signs that spring will soon be stirring. But the wait is often a restless one for the long-suffering animals, as cheerless fields of stubble continue to remain chill and unyielding under hoof. Still, come it does, with the delicate primrose, the lengthening days, and the emergence of wildlife once more. Early spring also sees the birth of the Exmoor pony foals. In the damp morning, life in this hawthorn copse is still and peaceful to foals and other new arrivals. Ponies, though admittedly of different breed, are also very much a part of the bleak Dartmoor wilderness. Here, a predatory buzzard wings its way a stone's throw from Houndtor, a granite rock pile that has for nearly 200 years been associated with one of the West Country's saddest and most poignant tales. At the turn of the 19th century, a serving maid known simply as Jay worked in a local great house where she was seduced by her master's student son and made pregnant. It was the unfortunate lot of unmarried mothers to be ranked lower on the social scale than paupers, and one dreadful night she was driven in disgrace from the house onto the lonely moor. Jay's flight took her up behind Hound Tor, where she discovered a shallow pool, and here, penniless and in a desperate state of mind, she drowned herself. After the discovery of her forsaken body, she was buried in unconsecrated ground at the foot of the Tor. But she's never been forgotten, for although no one has ever been found leaving them, there are always fresh flowers on her grave, like these daffodils, which also affirm that nature is continuing her annual rejuvenation throughout the countryside. Lambing is at its busiest, and the young lambs bask in long periods of warm sunshine. The hedgerows and fields become awash with the colour from variety upon variety of wildflower as the high moors softly excite to the exhilaration of spring. Roe deer enjoy the succulent leaves of the sweet chestnut. As night descends upon the woodland, the moon rises as a lamplight to reveal a secret and intimate nature that is reclusive and hidden by day. These fox cubs only recently emerged from their den for the first time. The initial 5 weeks of their lives were spent underground. Now the shadowy woodland floor offers the family an unconfined playground, which they enjoy to the full. The vixen will always find a moment or two of relaxation before setting about everyday jobs of housekeeping and cub care. This family of foxes will stay closely bonded together throughout the summer. By the autumn, the cubs will be fully grown, and then the young dog foxes will leave to find their own territories. Dawn comes to the enjoyment of the rabbit population, where the day starts with a wash and brush up around the face and ears, closely followed by breakfast. On the farm there is activity from a few late lambs, but generally these are lazy days, during which sheep enjoy lush meadow grass and ponder the start of the shearing season that will release them from their heavy winter fleeces. The mallard is our best-known wild duck, and they are a common sight along the rivers and streams fed from the rain-soaked moors. Here, besides this small tributary of the Exe, the drake keeps a watchful eye over his fluffy brood of ducklings as they dabble about amongst the stream-bed stones and enjoy an untroubled time in the cool running water. Mother, meanwhile, catches 40 winks until she is disturbed by the movement of this extraordinary creature, the caterpillar of the tiger moth. A red deer calf lies vulnerable. In the farmyard, there are new litters of piglets. On the hills, new calves of moorland cattle. Of the Exmoor ponies, the mare's ribs are clearly visible as telltale signs of the ravages of the previous winter and the physical drain of rearing April's foal. These are important days for the ponies, as they set about restoring themselves to their peak condition. There have probably been ponies living on Exmoor since about 60,000 years BC, which is well before the last ice age ended. Today's Exmoors are the toughest and truest to type of all Britain's native ponies. Although breeding herds run free on Exmoor, the ponies are only half wild. Each one has an owner who undertakes to preserve the purity of the pony's bloodstock. Without this care, the Exmoor could become extinct as a breed. Plagued only by flies, these foals are blissfully untroubled by concerns for their destiny as they enjoy the warmth of the May sun on their bodies. Bodies that have evolved in almost designer fashion. The Exmoor's coat is thick and wiry and covers a dense undercoat that insulates them from the foulest moorland weather. Also, their roomy nostrils have a large surface of skin that warms up the air before it enters the lungs. Together with deep jaws and strong, deeply rooted teeth, these remarkable ponies are ideal for their existence off the tough moorland grass. A grass which provides protective cover for many types of rodent, like this dormouse. But the slightest movement will betray its presence to the gimlet eye of a watchful buzzard. This fearsome-looking bird of prey symbolizes the wildness that's the very essence of the West Country moors, forever just out of reach of man's taming hand. There is little chance of escape for the dormouse. From her lofty perch in a favoured tree, the buzzard will simply bide her time before making the inevitable taloned attack upon the unfortunate prey. But of all the wild moorland creatures, the red deer, the largest of Britain's native animals, are perhaps the most admired. During the early daylight hours of summer mornings, small groups of hinds and their calves can be seen emerging from woodland cover to graze on grasses, heathers and lichens. They are joined at this peaceful time of day by butterflies and other insects which feed from the abundance of thistles that grow on the woodland margins. As the day gains its heat, the deer will return to the trees once more to rest and ruminate until dusk falls. On Sedgemoor, parent mute swans and their brood of downy grey cygnets enjoy the hot sun amongst the wetland reeds. As this cob idly dredges for food, colonies of black wriggling tadpoles and the odd newt try to keep themselves out of harm's way. While beside the billowing petals of the flag iris and the lazing mother bird, the cygnets happily pass the time preening themselves. They are finally encouraged into the shade of the willows by their mother, who clears their ponderous way down to a cool, refreshing dip. On Sedgemoor, summer quietly slumbers on. Dragonfly, with its larval coat outgrown, this is a patient time of waiting, clinging to the water reeds as soft wings and body slowly expand and strengthen before a short life given to flight. As one moves from the wetlands towards the sea, the flowers of Sedgemoor are replaced by the plants and flowers of sand and dune. A solitary buzzard glides with moth-like wings along the North Devon coastline. By following its soaring flight, we're introduced to a lonely and secretive part of England's southwestern peninsula that's remained largely inaccessible to man, and where the great cliffs of Exmoor's northern edge plunge almost vertically down to meet the sea. Formed by the great geological upheavals of prehistory, the cliffs and overgrown outcrops of this ancient landscape are home to many varieties of seabird that make their nests each year on the rocky ledges and crannies above the breaking waves. An adolescent gull watches a skein of Canada geese pass by, something also watched by a very young gull chick. The harsh grating of guillemots adds to the raucous cacophony of seabird sound, making hatching time an exceedingly noisy cliff face event. Next to this impressive waterfall, a group of young gulls stand on the precipice edge, calling uncertainly, whilst a kittiwake seems bored by it all. This newly hatched chick lies in the grass listening to the oyster catchers and the gentle peeping of a rock pipit. Indeed, the many grasses hide all manner of young birds like this immature great black-backed gull. But there's never any rest from the guillemots whose cries echo unceasingly around these Exmoor cliffs, which are also home to this hovering kestrel. Below it, the rising wind whips up the sea, and the high waves crash over the weathered rocks and pound the shore with their erosive power. When the winds abate, the tide line often reveals the delightful hermit crab, living a saltwater life amongst rounded pebbles, scallop, mussel, and winkle shells, and seaweed. They are comical, ungainly creatures that almost always carry a look of surprise in their eyes. The wind-driven rain on downy feathers has, however, made these herring gull chicks resemble damp hedgehogs. They cower for shelter in a small nook surrounded by the pale mauve flowers of thrift, whilst overhead a parent wings its way in the frequent search for food. Cormorants, selfish to all needs but their own, occupy a ledge only a short distance away from the village of Coombe Martin. From it, they observe the comings and goings of the local fishing boats. On board, the fishermen keep an eye open for marine visitors to the sea waters between the Exmoor coast and Lundy Island. Grey seals have become more numerous in the region over recent years. Some fisherfolk claim them to be a threat to fish stocks. As yet, this hasn't been proven. Despite the attentions of these fishing cormorants, the seals around this coast have a relatively untroubled time, and for most people are a pleasure to see. At Tar Steps in Exmoor's Barle Valley, one can glimpse something even more diverting. Here, on this ancient clapper bridge built by himself, the devil sunbathes in the warmth of the summer sun. Well, that's as legend has it. Generally speaking, however, no one gives Old Nick a thought when there's the pressing need for the refreshment that these waters give to horse and rider, especially as here during the arduous annual event of the Golden Horseshoe. Indeed, the horse is almost a cult in the moorland way of life. To many people, riding is an all-consuming passion that revolves around all manner of horsey events, like the trialing that takes place throughout the summer months and involves enthusiasts of all ages. Horses, though, need looking after, and back in the stables it's just part of the routine to patiently await a visit from the farrier. The anvil is still traditional, but a portable gas oven has replaced the old coal brazier. Although horses invariably shift uneasily as the farrier beats a red-hot horseshoe into a perfect fit, the port of smoke looks alarming as the metal sears the hoof wall, the skilled job of shoeing causes no pain to the force whatsoever. The farrier's work is, however, both tiring and sweaty and requires great physical strength. It's a solitary occupation done amidst the many other workaday tasks of horse care. A committed retinue of human servants constantly ensure needs are met and that bits, bridles and saddles are always polished and supple. At some of the larger hunting or riding stables, a farrier may be asked to shoe up to his physical limit of 9 horses in a day. These numbers mean nothing, however, when compared to the daily dozens of sheep that come under the electric clippers at shearing time. Wool has been a staple of the southwest moorland economy for hundreds of years, and many local streams once had their own woolen mill beside them. Their products were exported from West Country ports as far afield as China and produced the money that founded the British Empire. Sadly, the 19th century brought the death knell to wool as a West Country industry. Its far-flung rural nature just could not compete with the organisation of factories and their machinery in faraway Yorkshire. House martins now find the eaves of old farm buildings as ideal sites to rear their broods of nestlings. The ravenous twitterings of the young birds is almost incessant as they endlessly crave a diet of insects. As new fleeces start to grow, many sheep become fated to the auction pens. For farmers, auctioneers and buyers alike, sheep auctions are social and family dates in the calendar. People are knowledgeable and business is brisk. Everybody knows everybody else, so it smiles all round when a good deal is struck. £22, 19.5 kilos, 22. On Exmoor's high tableland, the waning summer days have a cooler edge, as the moorland year feels neither half in nor half out. A female adder basks in the September sun. This is Britain's most widespread and only poisonous snake. The adder is a day hunter, killing with a bite from venom-injecting fangs. Apart from man, it has few enemies and lives mainly on a diet of mice and voles. If pushed, though, lizards, frogs and toads also fall prey. With a large meal lasting a week or more, the adder will be looking for some hearty feasts before October's search for a cool, dry hibernating place like this hedgerow. The last flowers are visited by butterflies and bees as they extract the remaining drops of nectar. Foxgloves are nearing their end, as are the flowers of blackberry and vetch, to be replaced by the fruits and seeds of autumn. Snails cling to colouring leaves that hide surprising spiders. And whilst the blackberry crop matures alongside the elderberry, the thistleheads die. The woodland now becomes a strange and magical place, decorated with the wonderful forms of autumn fungi. Into the yellow sunlight of autumn comes the rut. For most of the year, the red deer live a peaceful life. But for about 3 weeks, beginning in September, the countryside echoes to bolving stags and the crashing of antlers. Each stag tries to round up a harem of hinds, but his success depends on his size, age, and how impressive he looks to rival stags. Those under 5, like these, are rarely strong enough to hold a harem. Generally, stags try to avoid fighting, but sparring is common among young, evenly matched beasts. The most successful stags are those about 8 years old, and they may gain a harem of as many as 20 hinds. It is easy to understand from the majesty of the red deer why the monarchs of England preserved them for their own enjoyment. Exmoor and Dartmoor were declared royal forests, complete with their own laws and officials. In the mid-17th century, Exmoor Forest was sold to a London lawyer called James Bovey. As the autumnal air takes on a cloying dampness, one can only wonder why Bovey should want to leave London society for an isolated moorland life. But having settled in Simmonsbath, Bovey's poor tenants must have wished he'd never come. For although he spent much of his time writing books on philosophy, as a landlord he was cold-hearted, disruptive, and oppressive, blighting his tenants' lives. However, the people had a champion in the guise of the local highwayman, Tom Faggus, who with his beloved strawberry mare stole from rich travellers using the moor's coastal roads. This rough diamond of a man was seen as a West Country Robin Hood, as he gave away much of his ill-gotten gains to Exmoor's poor and needy. However, with late autumn sunsets like this one, it's possible to understand what drew Bovey's gentler spirit to Exmoor's lonely hills. On the coast, not far from Simmonsbath, stands the spectacular Valley of the Rocks, where the slate is contorted into such strange formations that at dusk one could swear the valley was populated with men. One legend out of Bovey's God-fearing Puritan age is that they were once beggars who were turned to stone by the Almighty for the unseemly activity of dancing on the Sabbath. As the first hard frosts of winter descend again upon Dartmoor's granite outcrops, one can understand why it was loathed by early travellers. To them it was a hellish wilderness strewn with potentially lethal bogs. Before early man erected his sepulchral stones and cleared the moor for his agriculture, it's hard to believe this barren space was once blanketed by ancient oak forest. All that remains of it now is the relic of Wistman's Wood, whose stunted trees were once tended by druids, long before the wood was first mentioned in the 11th century Domesday Book. Ironically, man himself is no longer really in evidence, and the moor is left to its wandering ponies. Like the Exmoor pony, the Dartmoor is hardy enough to withstand the worst winter weather, but unlike the Exmoor, there is no restriction on the breed of stallion that can be turned out on the moor. Therefore, only a few Dartmoor ponies are purebred. They spend most of their time grazing, each herd within its own territory, travelling many miles in search of food. This spot, at the base of Haytor, is a favourite one for this herd. It's noticeable that some of them have a strain of Shetland pony in their blood, from the time miners bred pit ponies. With such days long gone, new generations idly content themselves as they please. Interestingly, popular tradition claims that horses can sense the supernatural, so one wonders if these can sense unearthly things in the Dartmoor wind. Mist, descending quickly over the lonely tors, brings uneasy thoughts of the inspirational legend for Conan Doyle's Hound of the Baskervilles. Yeth-hounds, the demon dogs of hell, are said to howl hideously as they hunt down the souls of unbaptized babies. Our ancestors believed they could prevent this ghastly fate by protecting a child before its christening by placing a piece of iron or a little salt in the cot, as these were considered powerful talismans against evil forces. But evil forces or not, Dartmoor can be a cruel place, and so it was to the Saxon nobleman, Child of Plymstock, who became lost in a snow blizzard on Foxtor. In a fruitless attempt to save himself from freezing to death, he cut his horse open with his hunting knife and crawled inside the belly for warmth. When his body was eventually discovered, his will was found scrawled in horse's blood on a nearby rock. A very different tale of endurance took place on Brentor. The church, perched on the top, was removed there from the bottom by the devil for his own black ends. A despairing community appealed to St. Michael, who, it is said, disposed of the demonic pest by tossing a great boulder at him. And now, boulder and church stand side by side as enduring monuments of good over evil. A mile or so away, the aptly named White Lady Waterfall cascades down into Lidford Gorge. Although this is a hauntingly beautiful place where the waters of the River Lyd force their way through the wooded chasm, there is above it one of the most annoyous, contagious and detestable places in the realm, or so Lidford Castle was described in the reign of Henry VIII. Here, grim and brutal judges became notorious as a law unto themselves. The 17th century poet William Browne expanded further when he wrote, "I oft have heard of Lidford law, how in the morn they hang and draw, and sit in judgment after. To lie therein one night, 'tis guessed, 'twere better to be stoned or pressed, or hanged ere thou come hither." It was here that Judge Jeffreys presided before his infamous role of conducting the bloody assizes after Sedgemoor's Monmouth Rebellion, and it is here that he's said to have returned in the shape of a black pig to forever haunt the site of the old castle courtroom. Whilst Lidford may have had a cruel penal history, the thoughts of incarceration can be little different for those men sentenced today. The first sight of the grim walls of Dartmoor prison must fill souls with dread in the bleak approach to Princetown. It was during the period when Browne penned his Lidford verse that pretty Widdicombe in the Moor experienced a phenomenon which people are still trying to explain. In 1638, a terrible thunderstorm centred on the church. An extraordinary flame passed right through the church, filling it with a loathsome smell like brimstone, and a great ball of fire fell through the roof. A man had his head cloven, and the hair of his head stuck fast to a pillar, where it remained a woeful spectacle a long while after. If the cause of this bizarre event can be attributed to natural forces, then the granite formation of Bowman's Nose certainly can. The origin of the name is a corruption of the Celtic Ver Men, or Great Stone. The granite once drawn from this now eerily silent quarry at Haytor was architecturally important in building part of England's heritage. For in 1825, Haytor granite was put to its most celebrated purpose by being used in the reconstruction of London Bridge. The Haytor quarries were among the largest worked in the 19th century, but they had a short history. In less than 100 years, they had come and gone, killed off by the development of concrete. Between Dartmoor and Bodmin Moor, though, granite is never far below the surface, with Bodmin having little to soften its hard edge. Visual reminders to the moor's past and brief boom years of shaft mining for tin still remain stark on the landscape. Long forsaken engine houses stand as testament of profit to the few at the expense of misery to the many who sweated out the mineral wealth beneath the moor. Amongst these tin mines and quarries lived one of Bodmin's great eccentrics. Below the landmark of Cheesering Quarry are the chisellings of an 18th century vicar's son, John Gunn. He was a hermit thinker whose legacy is this carving of Pythagoras' theorem on the roof of his cave. Bodmin is the smallest of the West Country moors. Littered with boulders and weather-beaten, the lonely reaches of this high moor are little known. There is, though, a harsh beauty to the place. Indeed, it was this landscape that gave inspiration to the best-selling author Daphne du Maurier for her much-loved tales of romance and smuggling. Shaggy cattle, bred for the hard upland life, appear unconcerned by their inhospitable environment, and they happily content themselves amongst the spikes of gorse and moorland grass. As the cattle wend their way down to the water's edge to drink, they will have little idea that these waters of Dosmery Pool have become immortalized in Cornish legend. It was into these supposedly bottomless depths that the sword Excalibur was thrown after King Arthur's last battle, and where the dark spirit of Jan Tregeagle is said to haunt after being condemned to spend eternity emptying the pool using only a leaky limpet shell. Punishment indeed for a lifetime of evil doings from which he amassed a corrupt fortune by abusing his position as the local magistrate. Out of this landscape of legends, a new legend has now been born. On the moor's desolate expanse there roams the Bodmin beast. Local sheep farmers have reported many of their livestock savaged by the creature. There have also been many local sightings, and a national newspaper has lain in wait hoping for a scoop, but to no avail. But now, this exclusive photograph taken at Jamaica Inn suggests that the beast is a puma, probably one of several large cats released into the wild within the last few years. Indeed, Exmoor too has its beast. Locals are convinced that this deer carcass stripped to the bone is positive evidence of it. In these winter days, the coats of the Exmoor ponies are fully grown and are now essential. The ponies repeatedly prepare themselves for the arrival of bitter weather. It is something which the majority of the pony herd is resigned to as they watch a hovering kestrel pass over a moving red deer herd. The stag, victorious in the rut, is leading his harem of hinds into the cover of winter woodland. For the pony foals, who still take sustaining strength from their mothers, winter is an experience yet to be fully endured as the year completes her cycle. Throughout it, we have witnessed the many beauties and contrasts that are a part of the West Country moors, where history and dark legend coexist alongside a rich and diverse wildlife of wetland, sea cliff, and high moor to create a heritage which is ours to cherish and enjoy forever, if man as custodian allows it.